they say you're not supposed to be angry in a courtroom, right? Because anger is the blood of the courtroom, Jerry Spence, and they all said whoever's angry is losing. But on the other hand, if the defendant's conduct, if the company's conduct is outrageous and you're not outraged, I don't think you have credibility.
The asbestos, this stuff was supposed to be cleaned out like the 70s, the 60s. I mean, how are these things still going on?
In May 9th, 1958, Johnson & Johnson finds asbestos in the baby powder and conceals it for the next 70 years.
But how do you get, educate our listeners and viewers, how do you get those other folks on the hook where maybe Johnson & Johnson knew, didn't tell anybody, but then Avon picks it up, sells it? How does that kind of work?
So,
welcome to this episode of Bourbon of Proof, where we interview those who have been both successful at law and life. We do so over several spirits, and today we're very honored to have on none other than Ben Adams, who came to us very closely from West Hollywood today. Ben, welcome to the show.
thank you so much for having me.
And of course, the esteemed co-host today, as always, Mr. Mauro Fiore Jr.
Hello, Bob. Thank you for having me as usual. Again, thanks.
And he's not had a drink before filming today, so he'll be on his best behavior.
Yeah, well, I usually get into it pretty quick.
That's right. And thank you to Charles Liu and Tom Hardy for letting us use their private bar here at the Bike Shed in downtown Los Angeles. We're filming the summer of 2024, which is also known as the summer of Ben Adams. Not like, what's the Adams that sings the summer of '69?
Brian Adams.
Brian Adams. This
Brian
is
Adams.
Ben Adams. So Ben.
Not to be confused with Ryan Adams, because that there's Brian and Ryan.
Ryan, sure. So the first thing we're going to pour for you today is something called Knuckle Noggin. And Knuckle Noggin is a peanut butter whiskey, but it's also upside down, right? But the tagline is 3 knuckle noggins walk into a bar. And this is a California peanut butter whiskey, and we selected for you because a lot of people know Ben Adams as crushing multiple 8, 9-figure verdicts, almost $1 billion the last one. The jury would have given you $1 billion. Probably, but he's also big into skateboarding. And this one reminds me a lot of skateboarding, just kind of this logo and the background of this company too, being from Vista. So we're gonna take a look.
I was a skateboarder myself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can tell. I used to catch a lot. I used to catch a lot of air.
Here, you can pour that one. I don't believe that for a second.
I grew up in the '70s, Bob, and during the heyday of the Bones Brigade. I don't know if you're familiar with those boys or not, but I was a big fan.
Oh, here we go. Well, cheers. Thanks for coming on the show.
Tracy Peralta and the Bones Brigade.
Oh yeah, like Dogtown and Z-Boys?
Yeah, I lived that time frame.
I can't believe you actually know. This one's pretty good. This is a good way to start a show.
Wow, man, you're gonna get me drunk already? This shit's good. Wow, what a pour, Bob.
I gave myself a gangster pour to start the day. It's like having dessert for breakfast.
This is the second or third of these peanut butter whiskeys I've had. They're all pretty good.
They're all pretty good. Yeah, peanut butter does well with whiskey. You know what does not do well with whiskey, Ben?
What?
Pickles.
Pickles. That'll be a callback joke for a while. So, Ben, your office is physically in Dallas, but you seem to be in wherever the courtroom is across the nation.
Yeah, we travel around. I think we're in 27 states now and just try the cases wherever they are.
Yeah, but you're a California guy. But how often are you actually home though these days? How does that work for you?
Man, it's pretty brutal. I think this year I've been home for maybe 2 weeks so far this year. We just had back-to-back trials.
For 2 weeks you've been home this year?
Yeah, maybe total. Yeah.
So where have you been back to back to back?
We had a trial in Chicago for a couple months, and then we had 6-day break before we started another trial in Portland right after that. That was multiple months. And then we're starting another one in South Carolina on August 5th.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Hey, but
The road warrior.
Yeah, and if everyone wants to see at least one of your trials are on CVN.
Yeah, the Portland one, CVN was there, so the whole thing's on CVN.
Yeah, because I was trying to get my last trial televised, but the defense lawyer cried so much that the judge wouldn't allow it. Whatever, I had one on. But if you go, a lot of viewers and listeners don't know, but there's an organization called CVN, C as in Charlie, B as in Victor. It is a network.
Courtroom View Network.
Courtroom View Network, subscription-based, where you can actually watch trials live or things that happened in the past.
Yeah, it's awesome. You can see a lot of great trial lawyers are on there.
But how did, because you do what's called toxic torts, is that how you would define it?
Yeah.
So just educate our listeners on kind of the stuff that you do, that you try.
Sure. We do mostly mesothelioma cases, so people have probably seen the commercials on TV late at night about mesothelioma. And that's a cancer of the lining of the lung that's caused by asbestos and nothing else. And so that's probably like 95% of the work that we do.
But these are, I mean, the asbestos, this stuff was supposed to be cleaned out like the 70s, the 60s, but been around since the 30s, 40s, 50s. I mean, how are these things still going on?
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing about asbestos is it's in talc. And so for decades and decades and decades, women would get this very rare mesothelioma cancer, and they'd look and try to figure out how these women were being exposed to asbestos, and they couldn't find any. And so in 2017, they couldn't find any asbestos exposure for these women getting the disease. So in 2017, a court ordered Johnson & Johnson to turn over 2 million pages of documents for the first time that showed Johnson's baby powder had contained asbestos, and they knew it since 1958.
Wow.
So there's this explosion of information, and then it all made sense why tens of thousands of women.
But how long was this being hidden? I mean, this didn't come to light till 2017.
Yeah.
7 years ago.
Well, didn't they used to say that the women that they couldn't figure out where they got it, they thought maybe their husbands had brought it home from work on their work clothes and things like that?
Yeah, so for some of the women, they were able to figure out, oh, their husband worked in a shipyard and brought the asbestos home on his clothes, and they did the laundry, and that's how. But for a lot of the women, husband didn't work in a shipyard, wasn't a brake mechanic, didn't do construction. Nobody, parents, dad didn't do anything, and they were like, well, I guess women's bodies just fail.
Wow.
And so there was this whole body of sort of
Junk science.
bought and paid for
Junk science.
Yeah, that said women's bodies are just kind of like no good.
But they knew the whole time then. They must have known the whole time that it was.
The companies knew.
Companies knew.
Yeah, so there's in May 9th, 1958, Johnson & Johnson finds asbestos in the baby powder and conceals it for the next 70 years.
Wow.
And then and they keep testing and finding it over and over and over and over.
That, I mean,
Is it naturally occurring just like in the mines or something?
Yeah, so asbestos and talc, they're just like rocks. They're minerals, but I just call them rocks. And under certain...
talking for juries, you see that?
Yeah, just rocks.
Just rocks.
And so rocks grow in the ground under certain conditions, and there's geologists that come. Under certain conditions, asbestos grows like veins in a talc mine. And so when they mine out the talc,
you can't get it out.
You can't get it out. When you mine it out and crush it up, you mine out some of the asbestos and crush it up in the talc.
That's nuts.
It's crazy. And then they're like, put it on your baby.
50s? They've known it since the 50s.
They probably knew earlier, but they wrote it down in 1958.
I've never been a baby powder user, but I know people to this day love to put baby powder.
You don't get moist down there?
Well, I have other ways to freshen up. I just remember, when I was a kid, I'd go in my dad's bathroom, and my dad was a pig, and there'd be just powder everywhere. My mom would yell at him, "You getting that baby powder everywhere?" He would just be like throwing it on everywhere.
Uh-oh.
But I mean, I think the older generation, they were very big into baby powder. But my dad would have it all over the bathroom. And my dad ended up getting lung cancer, but he smoked, so I don't think he didn't have mesothelioma.
Yeah.
He had just regular.
Did you ever get a mesothelioma case ever?
I got one lady who called me one time, and it was like she had died the family called me, and she had died from mesothelioma like years earlier, and they never called anybody, and I knew that wasn't going to go anywhere because I think it's a short statute, right? Even in California, I think it's 1 year statute of limitations.
Yeah, for wrongful death is 1 year, unless they were retired when they got mesothelioma, and then there's no statute. So you maybe call her back and see if she was retired.
That was years ago.
Yeah.
But I mean, because I've seen some of these cases where we're trying to get trials out, and there's been dedicated courtrooms and long cause for mesothelioma cases, because when you're doing these, you're not just up against Johnson & Johnson. Sometimes there's like dozens of defendants.
Usually, yeah. Usually people are exposed, like the women who get it. They usually use other body powders like Avon or Coty or Estee Lauder. All those had asbestos in them too.
But how do you get, educate our listeners and viewers, how do you get those other folks on the hook where maybe Johnson & Johnson knew, didn't tell anybody, but then Avon picks it up, sells it? How does that kind of work?
So, I mean, a lot of the companies did, what actually happened was Johnson & Johnson set up through industry groups this type of testing of talc that they knew couldn't find the asbestos because the microscopes were too weak.
Oh my God.
So they rigged the tests. And so there's a lot, Avon and these other groups were in those industry meetings. J&J led the cover-up, but they also knew, and they were also part of the cover-up. And hiding tests from the FDA, it's an insane story.
Sound like whenever Big Tobacco, R.J. Reynolds used to hire all these experts from Harvard that said cigarettes were good for you and they're testifying in front of Congress. I use that slide a lot in closing arguments. We talk about experts. I put them swearing in those people that said cigarettes were safe.
Oh, like the whole lineup?
It's the whole lineup. It's a powerful image because jurors remember that, you know.
I love that.
But it's crazy like how often we're exposed to people that say they're quote unquote experts, but they're literally bought and paid for.
Yeah, and I don't think like regular people understand how that works. Not just that they're bought and paid for, but that the peer-reviewed published studies they do are bought and paid for. I just don't, it's scary.
Do you have to expose that in your trials? I mean, how, because you're there for months at a time and I'm sure they call in all these quacks to talk about shit.
Yeah, they call in folks who say every single mesothelioma in women is spontaneous, 100%.
I mean, that's just not credible.
It's insane, but you know, some judges won't let you show that the last 70 cases they said the same thing. So it's always a challenge of exposing the truth.
How could they not allow you to do that?
You know, it's another case. It's trial within a trial. You know, I
hate that.
I hate that stuff.
And
But
then, I thought these cases mostly settled. I didn't think a lot of them went to
But
trial.
he's trying a lot of these. I mean,
so J&J, there's certain things I can say and not say, but essentially they're forcing them to trial.
they're also trying to create, from my understanding, I just read the news, shell companies to like bankrupt them and do this kind of stuff to, you know. I mean, how can you even possibly do that?
So they created these shell companies, put the liabilities in the shell companies, put the assets in another company, and bankrupted the shell companies. And they've done it twice. Billionaire bankruptcies.
Where are they trying to pull this off?
It's called the Texas two-step. So the statute, they do it in Texas, and then they get the case sent to North Carolina where they think the judges are favorable. It's all Texas.
He has a joke. He has a joke coming.
You ever heard of a double Irish?
Oh, here we go.
Oh, no. I'm just kidding. Well, back to Texas two-step.
Anyway, so they've failed twice. They're threatening to do it a third time, and we'll see.
But are they doing it in Texas? Is that where they're trying to do it?
Yeah, they do it in Texas. Honestly, it's so complicated, but the statute is in Texas that says you can do it. And then the actual litigation has been happening, I think, in North Carolina about it because they think it's favorable jurisdiction. If they do it again, the litigation will happen in Texas.
In Texas.
They're trying to do it just with the ovarian cases now because there's a lot of ovarian cancers caused by talc use. They told women to put it in your underwear. It goes right to the ovaries. And so there's tons of ovarian cancer cases.
Wow.
They're trying to do a bankruptcy just with the ovarian cancer cases now. And I think they're going to fail, but nobody
Why
really knows.
why doesn't, like, let's do another pour about where we're talking this tomorrow. Well, not of this. We'll maybe finish off with this. So, by the way, I selected this one. This one's called the Redwood Empire. And this is bottle and bond, so it's going to be much hotter than a peanut whiskey, but 100 proof, right? So 50% alcohol. This one was started, so it was distilled in 2017, the same time that Johnson & Johnson finally gave us millions of documents that you were able to, you know, get where we are today. And then 2022, 5 years later, is whenever there was actually, after it's done aging, when they poured this bottle into what we see. It's beautiful here today. But it's a rye whiskey. I promise you there's no talc in it. I cannot actually promise you that, but it might be, but I don't know.
It says here it's 87% rye, 5% wheated, and 5% malted. That's pretty good.
This is a pretty high rye. I mean, not a high rye is like just means it's not over 50, but this is a lot of rye that's in this. But this is going to be a lot.
It's called Rocket Top.
What does it
Rocket
mean
Top.
to have a lot of rye?
Just the way that they make the whiskey. So rye whiskey, they call it rye. It just means that it has more. It's made more than 50% with rye in it, because a lot of bourbons are corn based.
Okay.
To be a bourbon, you have to be
51%. 51% corn.
51% corn, made in American oak barrels, and there's probably something else that I'm not forgetting right
It
now.
has to be aged for 4 years.
And aged for at least 4 years. But all bourbons are whiskey, but all whiskeys are bourbon. So this is not a bourbon; it's a whiskey. He didn't even cheers. This pig.
Cheers.
He's just jumping the gun.
Getting right to it.
Yeah, but this is the Rocket Top. So this is a special one that the Redwood Empire does. So this is I think it's Sonoma, California.
Yeah, it's another Sonoma whiskey, bourbon and whiskey maker. It's good.
Oh, this is good.
Pretty good too.
So for 100 proof, this was probably, I would guess 70 proof for peanut butter whiskey. I didn't check this one, but then jump up to 100
The
proof.
peanut butter is not. It's not that strong. What is it? Things backwards. It's 70 proof.
70.
Yeah,
So
pretty
35%
low,
alcohol.
Pretty low proof.
So we're jumping up to 50% alcohol, but yeah, it's pretty good. I never had this one.
Good.
So this comes from, both of these bottles were sourced by the Booze Outlet, who sponsors the show. Mara and I put out ridiculous asks for bottles that are very hard to find. So we got these ones for today, and this one's pretty good. I like this Redwood Empire. I could drink this every day.
I think we had another Redwood whiskey on one of the shows that was really good, but it was like 120 proof. It was real.
There's ones that are really strong.
Very, very strong.
I got a lot of buddies in Texas at the law firm who are obsessed with bourbon. Like,
Really?
their entire house is almost filled with bourbon.
We
Like,
should
it's like
come.
nothing I've
We
ever
should
seen.
come down and do a bourbon of proof on the road to Dallas.
Isn't Whiskey Pete from Houston or Dallas?
Whiskey Pete's from Houston.
Houston, yeah. You ever heard of that guy? He's got a very famous podcast about.
He's a show on ESPN about
What's-
whiskey.
What's his name?
Whiskey. I don't even know.
Chris Hart with a K. He's been on the show before, but
Whiskey
I went to the Whiskey Houston Social that he puts on. It's the biggest whiskey social in America. There's like 5,000 people that go to this thing. So actually it's a pretty funny story. I walk in, it was my first time there, and I had like co-sponsors and stuff, because I've done stuff with Chris before. He just hands me a bottle of Pappy 23. He's like, "This is yours for the night." I'm like, fine. So I just put it in my back pocket, and I'm just walking around this big convention, and people are like, what is, giving pours to people, and like, you have a bottle.
Wow.
I just finished it off, and then
Yeah, I was
Awesome.
supposed
then
to
I asked for another one. He gave me something else that it wasn't as good, but yeah, he's a good dude. You know,
Nice.
he's casually related to Evan Garcia, the trial
No
lawyer.
kidding, huh?
They're
But they're both from Houston.
both from Houston. They're like siblings, married siblings, so he's like kind of related, but not by blood.
You know, the one question I have on the mesothelioma cases
Sure.
is that this stuff, as a casual observer, I do other type of injury law. From what I remember, it was hard for you guys to try to rush these cases to trial before your clients died.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the insurance companies and the big companies
Wait about.
try to delay the cases to hopefully your clients die, but then the cases are worthless, right?
Right,
So do you still deal with that?
All the time. Yeah.
That is just crazy.
Yeah, they just try to run out the clock. So they try to depose the client for like 100 years and like kill the client via depo, and it's happened. People have died at their deposition.
way.
In LA, they used to allow the depositions to go on for like 25, 30 hours, like weeks. And this is a sick person who can barely breathe, who can go like 1 or 2 hours a day and then is just like destroyed.
How do these people have a heart? I mean, they're just asking questions like, "Where was your paycheck from this day on this hour?" For hours.
For hours, yeah, it's gotten a lot better. So there was some legislation passed after somebody died at a deposition, limiting it to 14 hours in LA. So it's gotten a lot better, but yeah.
Is that 14 hours per defendant? Because your dozens are all together.
Total.
Okay, good.
Total.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's great. So
And I
that's
know
really
in California, you guys had a heavy lobby that passed, I think during COVID, 2020?
Yeah, where pain and suffering was preserved, even if they died, because everything was just stayed basically in California during COVID.
So they got the pre-death pain and suffering was because of these cases where they were literally waiting out the clock till they died.
Exactly.
That's
yeah.
so fucked up.
Yeah.
So what states are you licensed to practice in?
So I'm just licensed in California, but we just pro hoc in, and we've got attorneys licensed all over the country.
But do they give you flack because your office is physically supposed to be in Dallas? Mm-hmm. And when you pro hoc in, I remember like every time I pro hoc into another state I'm not licensed in, I have to fill out this form, and the judge sometimes gives you a little bit of lip service.
It's so common in asbestos litigation, mesothelioma cases. All the companies, they've got their local lawyers, and then when trial comes in, they've got all these big shots that parachute in. They're all pro hoc, so they don't really want to fuck with our pro hoc because.
Yeah. So what do you think about local counsel? My Texas license, and we still in Texas have to get like a local person, and it's just a different thing. So how does that work for you guys?
Yeah, so we use local lawyers. We partner with local lawyers in every state. where we're not licensed, which is a lot of them. And, they just, in local jurisdictions, there's the rules, and then there's like the local unwritten rules that you have to know.
Like when the other defense lawyer goes back in the chambers with the judge and they start talking, it's like, wait, what is this? What's going on?
Yeah, and if you just like parachute into some local jurisdiction and think you're a big shot, you're going to get hometowned for sure. They don't like, especially if they think we're all from Texas because our law firm's in Texas, so they're like, oh, this fancy Texas lawyer has. You got to have a local to explain the local rules.
You show up in your Vans and be like, I'm here to skateboard and live it. Oh, what was one of my favorite video games ever was Skitchin. Do you remember this one?
I didn't.
It was
I
on
had like
rollerblades.
hippie parents. I didn't have a TV till I was like 14.
What?
So yeah.
Skate or Die was one. We had Skitchin. There was a lot of stuff you would have loved back in the day.
I missed out. Yeah.
I feel like you were born in 83-ish?
81.
81.
Yeah.
Yes, we're the same. I'm 80.
Yeah.
He's like 74.
74.
I wasn't allowed to have a TV as a child.
Really?
So I would go over to my buddy's house and I'd see a TV and I'd just be like awestruck. And they'd be like, let's go play outside. And I'd be like, shut the fuck up.
Wait, what?
I must.
So what would you watch? Do it
Anything.
on the port. Just do it on the port of the heavy one, because I want to get into this.
Anything.
Watch like the Brady Bunch. and stuff?
Like scary movies, like bad stuff I wasn't supposed to see, just anything. The TV,
Mara-
I was mesmerized.
Morrow used to get those discramblers where he would just look like this, like sideways, to try to look through what the.
No, I could see. We always had, the skin channel was always scrambled, but you could watch it.
Oh, Cinemax, yes, Cinemax.
You could watch a little.
A little more.
I have far
My,
to offend you.
There might have been a family member of ours that was able to get a descrambler for anything in
Really?
the Pittsburgh area. My brother and I were like the drug dealers of descramblers, so our teachers were like getting new ones every other month to watch all the shows. So we've got all that stuff at home.
Wow.
Oh man, the summers were like the best. We'd stay up late, be watching like the Octagon fights, like every single like pay-per-view movie you've never seen. It was the best.
Those were the days.
I admitted to a crime on air.
Yeah, those were the days before.
Statutes are out. Do another one.
Before satellite.
All right, we got about 5 minutes left, and I want to hear about this this no watching television bullshit.
Yeah.
So your parents you were born and raised in SoCal?
I was born and raised in Vermont. Lived in Boston for about a year. Then my mom wanted to go to. She became a naturopath, like a naturopathic doctor. So she moved to Seattle when I was 3 years old.
So where do you get the passion? Because you've been in this game a long time, and I want to talk to you because early or mid-teen, 20-teens, you were with Simona Faris, who's one of the most, historic trial lawyers, one of the most altruistic. She ran for office before just to help human beings.
I like Simona.
I love
She's
her.
great.
I love her.
I've met her through Raleigh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
She, we were actually, her and I were up for trial lawyer of the year once. I think we had lost to, Raleigh was up that year too, and we lost to somebody else. I forget who it was, but we were in a room, and she's like one of the most fascinating.
Yeah. Dude. She's a legend.
A legend. So what was it like to work with a legend as a young lawyer?
It was amazing. So Simona's story is she was a paralegal at this law firm. And she was like, one day I looked around and I was like, I could fucking do that. So as a single mother, she went to school, at night school, got her law degree, got out of law school. 8 years later, she was the named managing partner of that same law firm.
Wow.
Yeah.
She was traveling everywhere doing this stuff.
Yeah, she's the real deal. So I saw Simona, the way the asbestos cases work, I was working at a different firm. They're all consolidated from San Diego, Orange County, LA in one courtroom. So as a young lawyer, you get to go in a courtroom, there's like 100 lawyers, and you sit there waiting for your case to be called, and you get to see lawyer after lawyer argue. It's awesome. So I've been doing it for about a year. And one day I saw this, little woman who didn't look like any lawyer I've ever seen, just arguing against 100 defense lawyers. And she was just, she just had like the passion. But she wasn't just like angry, she was like articulate and passionate. I was like, wow. And I went back to my firm and I was like, who's Simona Faris? Like, who is that? And they're just like, oh, she's this legendary trial lawyer. And I was like, wow, I'd never seen anything like that. And then I ended up leaving that firm, going to another firm, and one day I was actually doing defense work for a little bit, like 6 months. I was doing insurance defense.
That's gross.
It was super gross. But it was a firm that had about 5% plaintiffs' cases, and they sniffed me out immediately, and they gave me all the plaintiffs' cases. So I was still really doing plaintiffs' work, but it was a defense firm. And
what is the name of your current, for people who don't know, what's the name of your firm now? And then
the current firm is Dean Omar Branham and Shirley. It's a Texas firm that's nationwide.
But how do you like, being a California guy, because it's very hard to get these trials. It's very hard to be the A1 in these trials. And it's usually an egocentrical thing where people are battling who's going to try these bellwether cases. And those are the cases that set the barometer, right? So when Johnson & Johnson, I guess, got revealed, there's a lot of who's going to try the A1 cases. And it was you and a couple other folks that are out there on the front lines trying these cases. How does that go down? And how was Morrow not in that conversation?
Yeah, how was I not? How was I not on the steering committee? God damn it!
I mean,
I got a few answers, but
honestly, the way it works is that, I was a second chair for trial after trial after trial after trial, and then there becomes a point where the first chairs are too busy, and a trial comes up, and you just got to be like, I'm going to do it, and I think everybody wants to be a trial lawyer until a trial comes along.
Yeah.
And then it's like, who's going to do it? And to me, I'm so scared of trial. Like, it's terrifying for me. I'm still scared of it. But when that opportunity came along, I felt like I was ready, and I was like, I'll do it. And then you get some success, and then when another trial comes along, you do it, and you just volunteer, and that's how I did it. So I had these great mentors. And then when the opportunity presented itself, I was like, I'll do it.
Usually the first opportunity is not the best opportunity.
Exactly.
Usually like, hey, try this shit case, which we've done many times, Morrow, to try to cut our teeth. And I tell every lawyer that's out there, if you want to try cases, you want to establish yourself, you have to be ready to you're going to try a case and likely not win and certainly not make any money. Because you're there to earn your stripes, to be comfortable in the courtroom. Because it takes time.
Yep.
It takes time, especially you, because what I find when I do a national trial practice, it's hard to walk into a courtroom in another state and walk in and say, you know what, I'm the big dog here, because you can't start that way.
Right.
You're playing by their rules on their home court, and you deal with that every day. That's got to be hard.
It's super hard. I can't say that I've mastered it, but I just try to be myself. I'm an introvert. I'm like a shy person. I'm a soft-spoken person. But I'm also, if I love my client, I've spent a lot of time with my client, and I believe in the case, then I just be me.
So with about Ben, if you go to his website, it's really funny because Ben's hit, most recently, a few $100 million verdict. He's $100 million settlements, $50 million verdict all across the country. If you go to his website, it just says, "I love my clients." That's pretty much all it says. It's just like, "Hey, I'm Ben. I really like my clients. I like spending time with them." It's like I had to search a little bit to get all the verdicts. But it's a testament to who you are.
Yeah. A soft sell.
Yeah, I've got an ego like everyone else, but I really think if you how do you get a $100 million verdict, right? How do you get a $1 billion verdict?
You gotta love your client, love the case.
Yeah,
you gotta love it. They know if you don't.
You gotta. In our cases, you guys try cases where it's like an old lady ran a stop sign, and it's like, man, how do you get the jury upset about that? But we try cases where it's like literally a multinational corporation that engaged in mass poisoning of babies. Like, you turn that up high enough, and you turn up the love of your client high enough, that's it. Yeah.
But I feel like if you, just the person that you are, just spending time with you, if we're in a courtroom, a jury's listening to you, you come from a sense of credibility. And I feel like you probably, with the soft-spoken sell, it's not like you're there to sell them on something. It's like you're there to educate them. This is the way that it is. I'm technical. This is how I'm going to outline it for you, and then dominate.
Yeah, I think, they say you're not supposed to be angry in a courtroom, right? Because anger is the blood of the courtroom, Jerry Spence, and they all said whoever's angry is losing. And I agree with that. You can't be a jerk. You can't be angry too soon. But on the other hand, if the defendant's conduct, if the company's conduct is outrageous and you're not outraged, I don't think you have credibility.
See, you know what? Because I've never done the jury. You're not a Jerry Spence guy. You've never been through that. But you know much. We probably know enough about it.
I know enough about it.
But we've heard this preached, and I do believe that there's moments to have outrage and anger, or to show emotion. And if I had to classify my trial technique, I'm passive aggressive, the whole time, whatever. But at moments, you have to be able to turn that up. And we were trying a wrongful death of a migrant worker up in Santa Cruz, And one of my partners, Tom Conroy, I used to play baseball with, he was trying the case with me. And I'll never forget this, like, this expert was up there talking nonsense, wouldn't answer a question, and he got pissed off, and he was like, "Sir, a man is dead. I want you to listen to my question, and I want you to answer." And it was powerful. You could hear a pin drop. He answered the next question. We went back to the hotel room that night, and he's like, "Do you think I was too mean?" I was like, "Actually, I think that was perfect." We talked to the jurors, and they all loved it. It was one moment,
Right.
but it was super powerful.
Right.
One moment.
Yeah, you know, I used to get very angry in the courtroom a lot, and it didn't usually have good results until maybe like 10 years ago. Steve Artesarian, who's been on the show, is a real good trial lawyer.
Yep.
I think we were having dinner one night, and he was telling me, you know, I used to get angry a lot. I don't get angry anymore because I realized that the anger needs to come from the jury box. They're the ones who have to get angry in order for your client to do good in this trial. You being angry doesn't translate to the jury being angry. You have to figure out a way to get the jury angry without yourself looking like the angry one.
So one thing that
And that I've took that straight to heart. And
so I was trying a case in San Diego, and Nick Rowley was trying one at the same time. And we were just talking as we were like in the hotel room down there, and he told me this one thing about dealing with, in rebuttal, what he does, and it's borderline. Nick toes a line,
Yeah.
right? But you got to do it artfully. So I do this one thing now, and it's been, now that I file motions in limine, that I can't do it, and they try to, if they do your research, they call you on it. But in rebuttal, I go up and I'll be like, you know, we're sitting here listening to what we heard the defense lawyer talk about it, and I'm sitting there, and I'm pretty angry. Imagine my client's feeling. They must be outraged, and I'm sitting here white knuckled. I don't want to object. I don't want to say anything, but this makes me really pissed off, or teed off, whatever I say. But underneath of that anger, because anger is a surface emotion, underneath that is fear. Fear that the 12 of you bought what they were selling. And this is like the quintessential feeling that I have. But under that fear is alleviated because I talked to 12 of you during jury selection. And I feel like the 12 of you are not going to buy this nonsense. And when he told me this, and I do it in a lot of trials, and it's, the defense now when they call you out on it, it's pretty funny, they're like, you can't do it, but it works. I mean, the jurors tell me it's one of the most powerful moments whenever you talk about stuff like that.
Yeah,
You can steal it because I stole it.
All right. I steal everything.
Yeah, we all just take stuff, make it a little bit better. So Ben, at the end of the episode here, we always ask for you to pick your bourbon of proof. You know, and you, the toxic tort lawyer, there's nothing more toxic than whiskey, but it's also medicinal. I actually never get sick because I think I drink a lot of whiskey. I'll take that to my grave, an early grave. But we could do some junk science reports on that are peer reviewed.
Well, during Prohibition, they let people drink whiskey if they had a prescription because it was medicine.
That's actually true. So the old Forester was a doctor, Dr. Forster. Yeah.
Old Forester was sold as a medicine during Prohibition. You needed a prescription.
I didn't think you were awake.
I'm awake. Talking about.
So Ben Adams, what is your bourbon of proof out of these two?
I like the skateboarder bourbon.
I love it.
It's super good. I could drink this for sure.
All day. I feel like you're a guy with a lot of patches. Do you like patches?
In high school, yeah. I definitely had some patches on my backpack.
On your JanSport, you had some patches?
Like the skater, black label.
So,
patch,
did you
for sure.
skate competitively, or were you just screwing around at the half pipe with your buddies, or what was the deal?
I had some sponsorships. I had like a board sponsor.
What?
Yeah, there's videos of me on the internet. Like,
Well, we're gonna find them.
crazy.
Put them in this
Free-
episode.
freestyle?
Mostly like street skating because they didn't have parks. They didn't really have
What
skate
was it called?
parks.
Mostly what?
Street skating.
Street skating.
So like handrails and like stuff like
Oh.
that. And we'd make videos. And
Did you see? I mean, you seem to be that age. How old are you?
42.
Did you see that Jonah Hill movie called Mid-90s?
I did.
Remember?
It was
Did
a
you see that
great
movie? Jonah Hill made a movie called
That was my
Mid-90s.
life. Yeah. Really?
About
That and kids.
90s skateboarding kids in West LA. Just like skateboarding and drinking Arizona iced tea and shit.
Such a good
Yeah, it was,
It's such a good movie.
yeah, I mean, it was it's because I was a little older, mid-90s I was already like in college, in law school. But I could appreciate the mid-90s because I lived it, and if that's exactly your era, so that movie would be right your era.
Exactly.
Yeah, you got to see
That was like my
mid-90s
childhood.
I'll watch
with
it.
Jonah Hill. It's it wasn't his biggest sin, it's a movie about the mid '90s skateboarding kids. I mean, literally, I think it was at the art houses or whatever. But he wrote and directed it. It was like his passion thing. But he's probably the same age as him, Jonah Hill.
He's like a real skater.
Yeah, and he's like a real skater. You got to see that movie. It's not a blockbuster film or nothing, but it's a cool movie about it.
I mean, that was our genre. Like, because I grew up in Pittsburgh, it was like, it's a little different on, we didn't have I mean, there's one season you can essentially like skateboard because there's like ice and rain and shit, like just a little different. We used to watch we used to play California games. We got inspired by hacky sack and things like this. The things you could do in California. Well, Ben Adams, thank you for coming on Bourbon of Proof.
Thanks so much for having me, Bob. I really
You're an inspiration to us, and thank you for fighting for everybody across the
I read
nation.
about your verdicts, man, and I always tell about, man, this guy is something else.
He's trying to find cases for you.
Yeah, it's like, damn, man.
Let's do it, Mauro.
One or two is a fluke, but like 10 of them, it's like, okay, the guy knows what he's doing.